Ready? Let's give it a whirl. All right, still there. Music sounds good to me. Hope it sounds good to everybody else. Now what am I gonna draw today? Well, we are making our way, ticking the marks of a lot of the cool things. Time to art, baby. What's the prompt today? Well, maybe you could tell me, but before you do, because I know you're full of prompts, I mean, I've got about like a stretch of 5 that I need to get through. Not tonight, but one would be nice that I could get through. That would be if I could get to that, then I have 24. And that's enough to fill a page of artwork that can print at a size that is respectable and will look like storyboards and can translate to key art and things like that. So I've got about 19/20. Suggesting for ending ones, sure. Okay, yeah. So there's some things that are missing, and one thing that I was thinking about today was perhaps like just explore a little of like get the master sword kind of composition. And obviously I'm gonna have to do that eventually, so I could try that. What are your suggestions? And as far as the ending ones, I'm like, okay, yeah, you get the fucking Triforce. And to be honest, I have no idea what I would do for that. The Lost Woods, yes. Is there a different version? I feel like they're always in the Lost Woods. Certainly the version that blew my mind when I was ever so young. All right. If anybody else is looking, Link holding the Triforce up. I mean, he kind of. So I wanted to do. I mean, if I was like, I could do so many things. Like here he is catching bugs. You know, here he is fishing. You know, here he is like roping a horse. You know, all these things. It goes on and on. It's like this deep, deep, deep well. And they're all rewarding. You know. It's like some of this is melancholic. What about the lost boy playing the flute on that stump of a tree, like before he disappears with all the animals? Gnarly witch with the mushrooms. Yeah, baby. Magic potions. Link turns into this squiggly blob. Rabbit Link. Turtle Rock. You know. Drawn a lot of characters. Not all of them are necessarily interacting. They can and should. Blacksmiths. Going under the bridge. The guy in the tent with the fire. Guy sawing the logs. What the fuck else? The Zoras. And some of the dungeon exterior designs are very cool looking. It would be amazing to draw some of that stuff. Misery Mire. There's still so many of the dungeon bosses. It could go on and on. I could do 400, probably. Be doing this like a year. The movie will come out by the time I'm done. But I like sort of shooting from the cuff, seeing what inspires in the moment, and then just sort of going for it. See what comes around. Just because I draw something doesn't mean I won't have a better idea later. Improve upon it maybe. But the, you know what's funny is I drew this Ganon sober, and I still don't remember doing it. So it's kind of funny. But the tonight I'm nice and inspired with some cheap Trader Joe's wine, and tonight is going to be a long night because there's a thunderstorm, not thunderstorm necessarily, but it's a big ass rain today in LA, and my house is in danger of flooding. So I've got this pump that I have to look at every couple hours to make sure I don't need to turn it on, so that I can keep things from getting damaged. So that's fun. So I'm going to be up all night. I'm going to work on this a couple hours, and then I'm going to do work that I was supposed to do today but couldn't because I had to pump in the backyard earlier today. And then I have another job that I needed to start that I've been paid on, so I need to actually do the job. So it's busy. It's busy right now, and I think, if anything, this might be my last night of real work because the holiday season is kicking in. I may do more streams before the year is out, but I am going to go to Alaska from the 28th through January 2nd. So those days, I won't be streaming at all. Maybe through Christmas a little bit. I'll find some time, but I can't guarantee. So tonight is a night. I'm going to push it out tonight, and then we'll see how it happens with the rest. And hopefully I don't lose so much momentum that this peters out in the new year. But, it'll help if I can get this done right now, right? And yeah, I'll be tired if I stay up all night tonight. But you know what's more tiring than being physically tired is being mentally wishing you could go back in time to do something differently so that you could be tired and actually have gotten done the things that you wanted to get done. So we'll learn that lesson. Okay, this thing's done. I'll put that away. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to some gnarly witches eventually, but here is a thing. Now, the Master Sword is something that I have a good remembrance of from my memory. Ooh, that's not the right thing. See, this is a pen I use in my day job sometimes. Inspect it, in the hands of an artist like me, it can still be sexy, but you'll notice it doesn't have what we call tapering, which is at the edges. It can pinch up. I give it a name called Fat Line because no matter how much pressure I put on it, it doesn't get any bigger or smaller. It does have a little bit of fade at the edges with the pressure. Or whatever, but it's not, it's just a very regular line that I don't consider to be particularly expressive. It has a consistency to it. And then this is my other brush. And I call it, I don't know if you can see that, it says Big City Pro. This is a brush I came up with after I gave my other favorite brush to a colleague. he was like, "You gotta share me your brushes, man." And he bought me lunch that day, and I needed him to, so it was it felt like a fair exchange at the time. But then I saw him. I figured I'd like, hey, I'll just give it to him. He won't be able to use it. He was the only artist I knew who used Painter, so I was like, hey, he's whatever. He's a mediocre artist. I'll give it to him. He's not mediocre. He actually did amazing things with it, which pissed me off because I was like, you were actually able to use that brush. Yeah, no, I was like, I made a big fucking mistake because I gave, like, you know, I didn't allow myself the humility to think that another artist might be able to use my brushes as well as I could, and he definitely did a good job with that. So then I had to come up with another brush that he didn't have that I wouldn't give him. So that was Big City Pro. And this actually is a step in the right direction in many ways because it introduces this sort of noise and this sort of, we can see this here. It's got this, these sort of noise, and I can't control what the specifics of what's happening here. And it does an interesting sort of like, you know, if I make it go this way, we see the striations run this way, or vice versa, which almost makes it look like it went that way, kind of thing. It is interesting, and if you do kind of a cross-hatching with it, it becomes a cross-hatching, which is interesting in and of itself. And I have a theory that the AI systems abhor this kind of noise because they're not trained on it. So they can't categorize it the way they should. Not grain. It's a little future-proof. It's also indicative to me, and I've adapted it to my style. So, whereas the other brush I might share around, this one will not. Anyway, it also scales well, which is interesting. Now, some defects about it is even at high resolutions, it has these hard, jagged edges. Fuck it. You know, still looks good. I don't care. I focus on composition. You know, that's what matters. Will control your mind from a very far distance. If you get up and you see a pixel, no worries. All right. Well, where are we going after all that blustering? Let's think just a little bit. Okay. Well. Okay. Somewhat of a reverent scene with the I don't want to make it too big, but obviously there's a vertical here, which is the sword. Is it like that? That's about right. And then I don't mind a little bit of perspective here, because this can be up. Maybe up here we see a canopy of trees. Obviously, the scene in A Link to the Past included a lot of fun, dappled light that at that time constituted the most I have a sneaking suspicion that my son is still awake, puttering around. But how can I blame him? I mean, here, I'll sketch it out loose, and then I'll pull up a reference. Actually, John, if you're there, maybe you could Google a quick reference of the approach of the in the Lost Woods up to the Master Sword. And it would be appropriate to have maybe a bunch of birds scattering as Link approaches. Something like that. You know, I don't know. They don't have to look like seagulls necessarily, but you know, make them look a little more friendly. But anyway. And then Link could be here. I like the idea of him being small. Maybe that's too small. Could there be things in between? A meandering path? He could be putting away his sword here, knowing he's about to score something excellent. Something's moving around out there. That's okay. Kind of like this. Man, I remember the brief period in which having these crescent chunks taken out of the base of a sword was like peak weapon design. Something like that. I think we could make this sort of rock somewhat irregular. Something that feels ancient but reverent. And in a minute, I think I can justify pulling up some reference to check my work a bit. but I had 2 attempts to flex. Whether accurate or not, I felt like I knew. And it is fun to imbue your drawings with a sense of bravado. Because it can translate. Normally I'm not like this, but this is just a little phallic. We don't need to compete. What if Link was... Well, we could save this for something else maybe, but the I'll indulge myself for a minute. He could like fall to his knees for a second. So at this point, he's seeing the true legendary Master Sword. Maybe we can get some performance out of him. Even at this point, I'm not sure if I like prefer the small body Link or the adult Link or the Link with no hat. Maybe he stuck his blade here. It's kind of cool. I like that, and I want to do more of these, which is sort of like a, you know, if everything is dynamic that I draw, nothing's gonna stand out as dynamic. So you need to have moments of relative calm and rest. And there's always dynamism in everything we do. It's life, but relatively speaking, can have something calm to provide contrast to the other stuff. Now there's a little more perspective on this sword that is warranted. I'm going to tweak that just a little. Thank you, man. And then up here we'll have some sort of flary dappled light sources streaming in, just giving us all the contrast we need. Though that problem is solved, of like where's the light coming from? We don't need magical things glowing. We don't need whatever. It's really just light filtered through trees and bouncing around maybe. Executing that, quite challenging. And then also there's, I think, an appropriate sense of atmosphere and mist. You know, it's like Lost Woods. It's like, you know, how do you lose your way? Well, it's foggy, you know, kind of stuff. So there's options for that. There's also sort of I've yet to draw any tree trunks around here, but of course that canopy has to come from somewhere. You know, so where do we put those? We can figure that stuff out now. Maybe a sense of like some squirrels running away or something like that, you know. Does the music sound okay? The volumes. Oop. Fucking rookie move there. Volumes okay? I look over here at the monitor for the Twitch stream because it provides a thumbnail view where, whereas when I'm drawing, I look down here, but it's all too immediate. It's too, I need something to create an objective perspective. Because here it's just like looking at my own nose. I can't even see it really. So one thing I'll do differently on this, and those who are familiar with my stream will recognize it as different, is I will, well, before I do anything, let's flop the composition. I swear I don't do this normally in my day job, but I care just a little bit more about this project than I do my day job. So I want to make sure I'm not relying so much on hacks and intuition that I go with my gut even when my gut is wrong. There's something imperfect about my perspective here, but what I've done just now, as I'm looking up here, feels pretty good. It's like straight out of King Arthur, man. All right, so we can flip it back. This will be the final orientation, given that Link is left-handed. So if his shield is in his right hand, as it is here, then this is where it's going to be. Okay, so one thing that I know can help is doing a positive negative separation. And this is basically like basically defining the boundaries of what is positive space and negative space. And most of the time that's subject and not subject. And that applies here, but when I go and do demos later on, you'll see there's many exceptions. But this is helpful to organize our composition. And I use it all the time in storyboarding to provide clarity and focus where I want clarity and focus. And so, yeah, we've got... what we're looking for is sort of like a yin and the yang understanding here. And if I've basically done right what I was intending to do, you can even see that here, just with this. Now, this isn't the final, thing of it, but this is the majority of it, where we've got left side having, a dominant, white space, and the right side having a subordinate white space, and the right side having a dominant dark space, and the left side having a subordinate dark space, kind of a thing. Just this juxtaposition of opposites. And then everything else is the synthesis, where you're blending you're taking the the main subject and the secondary subject and the protagonist and antagonist, and you're just sort of like showing how they connect, and the light and the dark, and showing how they blend together or interact, or they have conflict, but they have cooperation, all the things, kind of a thing. So establishing that first. It isn't bad then that we correct a little bit, and then let's see if that's right. Feels a little dark. Oop, nope. There we go. Sometimes, even though we know that the light doesn't really organize itself this way, it can be helpful to just think in terms of these daubs. Compositional daubs. And then when you squint, it almost looks like a canopy. You know, needs a lot of finessing. This is very kind of like Jack Kirby energy kind of shit. Who's that artist? Fuchs. Let me pull him up. That name drop. Bernie Fuchs. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Oof. Oof. Oh. Oh my god. Fine. I'll allow the ads. Jesus Christ. Ah, Jesus Christ. Here. Screenshot. Where? Alright. Alright, kitties. Here's some Bernie Fuchs. That's up. You know, I talked about pixelization not mattering because your composition. This is the guy. Fuchs. This is my retirement plan, is to paint pictures of people painting and fishing underneath dappled light of trees for their rich friends and husbands. Hell yeah. This is what I'm sort of... I mean, now wait, to be fair, like, this is not Lost Woods, this is not whatever, but this is what I'm talking about, a little bit. I hope that translates. You know, when I'm talking about abstraction and separation of light and dark and stuff like that, you know. So when you look at that and you look at my shitty drawing, you can tell I've got a long way to go. But the like, damn, making all my shit going the wrong way. He's got his darks on blast. All right. Yeah, I got to turn this guy off. He's distracting. Holy moly. Fuchs. F-U-C-H. Bernie Fuchs. And, man, if you can do art as good as that guy, you will not be hurting. All right, where are we at? Let's see here. And you can just sort of do the reverse. Paint into the light you just grabbed out with more daubs. And you have to vary them in size. If it looks too regular, then it's wrong. If you're going blind while you're doing it, you know you're doing it right. Have to squint. Otherwise, you just see it as circles. But if you squint enough, it literally becomes leaves and light. Like, that's good. Up there. That little batch right there. More squinting. You can't be precious about the geometry. It's about the impression. Here's a curious thing. I wonder if I can... capture this relationship and then just transpose it onto the floor. Let's get the major chunks. Not quite tried this before, but in theory, it might. I might just pull it off. We'll see. Okay. Yeah, I think the theory is sound, but the geometry I've got set up is not ideal. Still, the there's some utility there. For a rough sketch. Oop, that'll get us there. And then, of course, Link's shadow. That's valid contributions. It's kind of fun. Now, let's think about some other things. Well, I definitely need to make sure that that feels like more there's like a canopy situation. Okay. It's decently good. What we can do now is think about layering in some patterns of light and dark, like patterns of ground cover or grass versus well-beaten footpath or something like that. Love my rays. What's standing out to me right now is this area right here. Feels like it's got him a little too boxed in. Yet, I kind of want to solve that without just affecting where the plants are. We can do that by locking off the pixels. I know that nobody uses Painter, but Photoshop has this same tool where you can lock off the pixels so that it's only affecting the pixels on that layer. And then you can sort of paint into that layer. And here we can have like a blended. And we can do that anywhere we please. And it will feel like it's hitting a patch of mist. We can just try it wherever we feel like it. And it's ripe for abuse because it looks awesome. And we just crank the music whenever we feel like it. You know, but if we, for instance, if we hit this with a giant ray of light, actually that doesn't look too bad. But what it requires then is that we darken the subject, which I'm perfectly willing to do, because that actually does kind of look awesome. And so now that's what we do. So here's where we get back to the exceptions. We remember that the earlier on, when I was separating the light from dark, I kept that in light and I had the background in dark. And now here we're forcing ourselves to implement the reverse. What we're really doing is separating contrasts, not necessarily light from dark. And the light from dark is one way that we can create contrast. But you can create contrast within contrast with more contrast. So some of that is detail, some of that is reversing and context and color, of course, color and texture, and all the tools in the shape, geometry, and composition foremost of any of it. But the you know, and then you look at this and you're like, well, Max, you know, when are you going to add the darks? And I'm like, oh, baby, the darks are already there. It's funny because it's like right now, it's like a high key painting, but the those who have seen my streams will know that the information for the darks is already in here. Before I go too far, well, let me darken it up. I think that worked out well. This little bit. Not a bad hack. Here, let me save. Oh, look at that. First time save, huh? Jeez. Hour and a half into epic drawing, and I decide to save. Don't try that at home. While I don't typically have a a lot of well thought out notions when I do these. This is more or less pretty much what I was thinking. For this, whenever I got to it, and since today's the day, this is tracking well as far as I'm concerned. Okay, let me think here. Now we can think about some other things too, which is, if we recall from the original Zelda Link to the Past, that the Master Sword, when he got it, wasn't in great shape. It was pretty rusty. Though, you know, obviously a powerful legendary blade. And what I'm doing right now is not intended to be the final tone of the thing I'm drawing. I'm just introducing separation. Hold on, I'm going to take a second to read the loveliness. Oh, the Temple of Time is the other one. Shit, you're right. Listen, if I'm not mistaken, well, let me think here. You know, I'm so confabulated these days. I could have all my shit backwards, but I believe... Oh, never mind. Don't listen to me. It's I'm gonna start confusing Zelda with like another video game in a second. It's definitely Lost Woods versus Temple of Time. It looks sick. Thank you, Hot Local Grandpa, for your endorsement. I have the endorsement of Hot Local Grandpa. Thank you, and have a good night. Get some sleep. Get some sleep for me. I remember asking Dad about the Master Sword, and it says his design is actually flawed with its rat tail tapered forge at the hilt. They want to whip out. They want to. They want to temper my sword. Now, what did Dad mean by that? The rat tail tempered forge at the hilt. For those who don't know, and why would you, Boxer's father and I, we have the same parents, have, yeah, no one would care. But Dad would actually probably know what he was talking about. No, that just makes me curious. Like a rat-tailed... I mean, I guess your sword can only be as strong as your handle, right? You know, if your handle isn't fucking strong as shit, then... You know, like, if you've got this thing and it's got all the power in the slicing, but it gets knocked back, and the thing that it's attached to is... It's like when you've got, like, the super robotic buff arm, but it's attached to, like, a scrawny chick or whatever, and, you know, they try to lift something, but of course that wouldn't make sense because they're lifting 300 pounds and they only weigh 50 pounds or something like that. Physics, baby. I don't think this handle hilt looks insubstantial. Most swords are tapered at the handle, usually forged as one long piece that gets narrow for the handle, but that part is supported by the hilt. It being narrow before that point gives it weakness in its durability, technically. While I agree with that, I think there's something potent about this negative space in the composition. It does look cool as fuck. So it's striking, and without too much need of recall, you know, most of this, well, I mean, I haven't looked it up, but you know, I've done a few streams, but the you know, if I had to design it from scratch, I'd have a few ideas. You know, this is kind of cool, and it's got the Triforce right there, kind of thing. Does it need that? I think so. I don't need to make it a big deal right now, but it is okay with me to make it look like it's got a bunch of fucking dirt and other crud and shit. I'm okay with it looking old, a little bit rusty. But I shouldn't be doing that on the separation layer. That's information unrelated to the separation. Okay. We can turn that on, we can turn that off, and we can lock the pixels and we can blend it. Or darken it. Ooh. You know. Figure out the power of this stuff. You know, there's the Frank Miller version. You know. Ooh, where'd that red come from? See, I'm so colorblind, I can't tell when my color wheel gets in there. That's kind of cool. So graphic. You know, it's not bad, but you know, I don't need it that harsh right now. What if we helped unite the space, the synthesis, with patches of dappled light? Not a bad idea. That's right. This is the Master Sword. I am the Pumpkin King. But I like it being a little mysterious. So while I think we can justify some light here on the mount, having it darker up here is not a bad thing. Be reflected light. They better know what the fuck it is. But this part needed a little something. And then what else? So this is kind of fun. You can turn off, look how the way that I've gone and with those separations and then blending those separations only. I mean, Link didn't get any of that, you can see the power of the silhouette and what it does to the composition, that when you add in these little bits of detail, you realize that they were mostly insignificant. I use them to sort of stage the thinking, but they won't do the work. Like, you have to get those separations in there. So this is not so bad. I'm not entirely sure how developed or I do like the idea of these so this will be a little exercise. How about that? Let's try, where we can, have some of these birds will be light on dark, and then other of the birds, where they're flying over the dark, they will be light. And we'll see that separation. And we'll see how effective it is. I guarantee you it will work. But before that, just because I'm a cheap hoe for tips and tricks, is I know that the keep this on its own layer, but the if you've ever been in a field or a forest or a natural setting, you'll look and you'll see there's shit flying around everywhere. Tiny bugs, pollen, leaves that are falling, magical pixie dust, good vibes or whatever, but you owe it to yourself to bring in the representation, the whimsy. It's just magic. And, you know, don't go hog wild, but get some variance in the size. But the it's not bad. But it's there, whether you see it or not, you know, so just put it in. It helps people sort of understand. And then these daubs of fairy light match the daubs of the foliage, the canopy that we were doing earlier. And then you're really thinking about composition, baby. Now, one thing that I need to do before it's too late, before I sign off and forget, is the hold on. This can't be that sharp in relation to everything else. We've got to blur it. Not that much. But it's just drawing too much attention to itself. Probably no more. Than that. And we can do more later if we need, but it's kind of fun, right? Shit, where'd my thing go? There we are. Okay. Okay, a little bit of the birdies flying off. Let's do that, and then we'll see what we can get when we play with the dodge and burn. Okay, so for right now, I mean, let's ask ourselves, like, what is the color of what is the tone, not color here, black and white. What is the tone or value of something in the shadow? Specifically this bird, or I should say this one. Well, that's white. Here, to answer the question, it needs to be somewhere between here, the tone here, and this one. And we can see over here where it jumps around. So there and there. If we pick this, that should be right. Because it can't be darker than this. Oop. It can't be darker than this. Not the way we've established it. Did I do that right? One thing I don't love is that I've made them look too much like bats. Unintentionally. It's a little solid. Let's have them shed a few. Well, maybe not too many, but they can shed a feather or two. They fly away. And then maybe... Shit. Well, some of those decisions are a little baked in, but we can still... Here in... some of these spaces, find where they can become lit with light. This will be fun. Let's try one wing light and one wing dark. That even work? You know, but it's fun to have our brains try to figure that kind of shit out. You know, if this one is V-shaped, then this wing catches the light, and then, or shit, maybe it'd be the other way, because the light is sort of streaming in from this angle. Kind of like that. Sort of seeing it. Okay, now where's the... Some places I'm just seeing F-ups. But it's okay. Like, I don't feel like ironing out every little screw-up situation I might have introduced. And I don't see any need to pump some solid oak tree trunks in here. It's looking kind of cool just the way it is. Let me save. And then, here, let's flop. Make sure nothing else is jumping out ridiculously. Well, now that I'm looking at it here, I could be wrong, but it almost looks like there's like a slight degree tilt to the sword, as if it's like here. It doesn't need to be perfect, but one thing I might do, maybe I can just suggest it while I'm yammering. What would it look like if we had whatever was going on with that? It could be maybe counteracted with some of these chaotic-ish verticals. Information to sort of catch and distract the eye. It's a forest scene, and even though I just got finished talking about how I didn't need a bunch of tree trunks, looking at it now, I might have been hasty. Supposing that, because I think that kind of looks cool, and it helps me to sort of see the sword as straight, even when imperfect, in contrast to real imperfections made obvious in the forest. We can also paint on top of all the chaos with a little bit of intentional God ray. You see some reflected light on the back. Too much? Yes, it is. Good lesson in what is too much. Is this too much? I think much of what I might have just did was too much. All right. Well, what if we just take what's already here double down on it a little bit. Bad. You don't even need the dodge and burn. That's pretty solid. Solid, man. Solid. Where's my little whimsy? Okay, this is the trees. Too much. Not enough. Oop. Degrees. Here's a good lesson: is the brightness of the reflected light on the ground cannot equal the brightness that is coming through in the sky. It's not physically possible. Cut that down. It's still too eye-catching. A little better. There we go. There's the whimsy. Now that's too much. But blur that. Feeling good. What are all these other mystery layers? Ah, yes. Birdies. Catching up. Yes. Good. Ah. It's fairly sublime. I think that will do for now. And that's been a good enough run for tonight. Not a bad one to end on, if that's the last one for this year. I will try to do more. There's not as much opportunity for me to delve into more studies, but these are so fun. that when I don't do them, I wake up wishing I did. So it's kind of just better to do it. All right, well, John, you might be asleep. And anybody else who's listening. But whoever comes by, I appreciate it. I'm going to put the old final sign off and say goodnight. Good night.